Second part of session 73. Let's talk here about Jesus and healing. Let the healing begin. In the first part, we started talking about magic once again, and what does that mean in metaphysical terms, and all that discussion that came out from Don and Ra talking about these dynamics of how magic happens and so on. So I left it at the question that starts with Jesus, the conversation about Jesus, and healing, of course, is part of this, so we're going to go through those questions. There's not much to say here as an introduction. One thing I'll say, because I know there's great interest in the study of healing and all of this, is that just like in other topics, I'm not an expert. Just like the ritual magic that I talked about in the first part, I'm not I don't think I'm an expert in anything, actually. But yeah, it's not, let me rephrase that, I'm not interested, and so I don't delve deep in there. However, I do have a model into which all of this fits, so I'll talk about that, and I'll give some of my directions, the way I see it. Doesn't mean that's how it works, but at least it's based on what we know of the raw material. And that's what I do here. I create coherence on the information that we have on the different topics and conversations that Don and Ra had, and hopefully I paint a good picture. Part of the introduction, as usual, for those of you who don't know it, timestamps right here on YouTube if you want to skip to specific questions. So if you're here for the second time, if you're here for the first time and just want to go to a specific question, doesn't matter. You have timestamps in which you can navigate, because this is a long video as usual. So all of my videos on the raw material have these timestamps. Now, the first question that I have, like I said, is conversation about Jesus. We all love Jesus, right? Because he was such a loving individual. So let's get into Jesus. Question 13, Don says, what was the orientation with respect to this type of communication for the one known as Jesus of Nazareth? And this is the orientation, if we go back, we're talking about the evangelist, right? The polarity of service to others working. I don't know why would Don ask that question? What does he mean? We'll find out. But yeah, this is the previous question that you're seeing here. This is the evangelist, right? Yeah, so I guess based on this, we want to know what's the orientation of Jesus, of this type of communication. Right, because Jesus, so okay. That makes sense. Let's read Ra's answer, and then I'll patch it all together. All right, what was the orientation of Jesus of Nazareth for this type of communication? Ra says, you may have read some of this entity's workings. It offered itself as teacher to those mind-body-spirit complexes which gathered to hear, and even then spoke as through a veil, so as to leave room for those not wishing to hear. So you see, Don was asking about the evangelists, which come and basically want to tell you about their faith, their religion, their desire for whatever it is. I'm not familiar with the evangelists specifically, but it's the, I mean no offense to anybody, it's the usual, I come here to sell you my goods, and because you need them. It's a sort of it's not a negative polarity per se, but it's a sort of push, onto, and that is a bridging free will, which is what Ra says, of course, is This is why selling to me was such a problem. I'll give you a very short anecdote. I think I've talked about this. I was sort of forced to sell my coaching and my training to people in a commercial gym, and I refused because I just didn't. They would teach you, how to manipulate people into their emotional part. They would teach you how to persuade people into telling you a little bit why they're there and what their emotional parts are, and then grab them by the heart or the emotion and squeeze it until they buy you. It was such a terrible thing. I just couldn't do it. It was just, that's abridging free will to me. That's what I felt. I mean, I didn't know it was abridging free will, but I think it's pretty obvious to us, that in selling, manipulation is just such a terrible thing, right? It just feels. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying it's a terrible thing for, I don't know, somebody like me, maybe. To other people, it's fine, but yeah. The point is that that's exactly what the evangelists or others are doing. Not all of them, but the method, of coming because, hey, listen, you have to be saved. You have to hear this. It's sort of preaching with an expectation in mind. So that's what Don is asking. What about Jesus? How did he do it? And so Ra is saying that, well, you should be familiar with his workings, and you know that he offered himself as a teacher to those who gather around and wanted to hear. And even then, he spoke as through a veil, which is, the metaphorical Jesus that we heard. So, leaving room for those who didn't wish to hear. That's the cryptic sort of communication that happens. And though I would argue that not only, there are many things surrounding Jesus here, and the very hostile environment in which he grew up, because it was a fanatic one, with the Jews just being very religious about, the scriptures and all of this. So, on top of that, also, I would add in that the mystical Jesus that he was, normally you can only talk about this stuff in metaphors and analogies and this type of. It's the best way to communicate things, because it's not that you're teaching them specific doctrine that they need to follow and believe. Is that they need to believe in themselves once they hear the words and they click, they have that sort of satori. And, satori doesn't come through scriptures. So I guess that's part of the veil in which Jesus taught or spoke. But there's more to this. Ra explains, when this entity was asked to heal, it oft times did so, always ending the working with two admonitions. Firstly, that the entity healed had been healed by its faith. That is, its ability to allow and accept changes through the violet ray into the gateway of intelligent energy. Secondly, saying always, tell no one. These are the workings which attempt a maximum quality of free will while maintaining fidelity to the positive purity of the working. Okay, so when Jesus was asked to heal, we call this in our ignorant religion miracles, things that only Jesus could do. And yet miracles happen, and then we say, well, that's God. Nobody else. It was just God. That person there, because we have pedestalized Jesus. But anyway, so we have, when it was asked to heal, let's look at the two things. First, you are healing yourself. Okay, that's the first thing. Why? Because you don't want people to call you Messiah or whatever, because that's just once again distorting the gnosis of people. See, people learned about this. People said, wow, healing happens and it's a miracle, but it happened because of me. See the difference? It's huge. It's you who did it. And that's not some humbleness that some fake humbleness that Jesus wanted to have for some reason. No, it's a legitimate thing. Only you can change your own outcome. Nobody else. This is once again externalizing it to say, oh, that person healed me, that person changed me, and so on. You change yourself. So that's the first thing. Let us be clear. If I heal you, I'm only helping you. I'm not healing you, actually. So that perception needs to change. And how was it done? It was done through faith, of course, that it was able to accept changes through the violet ray into the gateway of intelligent energy. Well, violet ray, 7th chakra, gateway of intelligent energy, indigo ray. Secondly, it said, tell no one, because why? It's a good question. Perhaps because of the environment that I explained before. Jesus didn't want to, be seen as somebody who worked with this or did this. I guess he felt a sense of duty when people believed in him, obviously. I think anybody would feel that sense of duty when asked, help me. And, I'm helping you help yourself. It's the first thing that he would say. And then, don't tell anybody, just keep it to yourself. That happened. Healing happened. This is not so miraculous at this point in our lives. We have cracked somehow the shell of containment with this information when, first of all, we see cancer being healed by no intervention, not even some holistic homeopathic or whatever, not even just the person alone suddenly just changed his life. It decided to move from its country. It decided to say, you know what, I'm just going to live my life, screw all of this, whatever. That changed his life, and suddenly, cancer is no longer there. It says, well, it's not there, of course. You don't have the thought patterns that were creating it, so change that and healing happened. So it's not a miracle, it's just obvious at this point that we need to change certain things. We'll talk about healing, of course, a lot more in this part, but that's one big thing. It's not miraculous. Now, what is the healer does? In any shape or form, the healer is providing information, right? I've given this example before, but it's a small one. People may shrug their shoulders and say, that's not representative, but it is. It's a small sample of what healing is. When you are asked by a friend, I have problems, with my girlfriend or my parents or whatever, and you sort of talk sense to them because you see that they're not making sense in their mental revolutions, and that person says, wow, that's brilliant. I don't know how I never thought about that, and so on. This person feels like a load has been taken off their shoulders. Well, that's healing. Of course, the thing is that we associate illness, like physical illness, with healing, which is the case in exacerbated thought patterns. But any thought pattern that is alleviated by the shining of pure information, and that's what you see in your friend. You say, well, isn't it this way? And you're just not seeing it the way it's supposed to be. And if the person allows it, then yes, because they could reject it and say, no, my point of view is right, then that person is not willing to change. And we'll talk about that here. But that's the way. You didn't heal your friend, you just talked sense to them. So if you can extrapolate this to so much more that is going on in our minds that we can't see it, and that's okay. That's why we have friends like Jesus. See, that's why he's the eternal brother. But this brother right here, let's go into the next question. Question 14, Don says, an observation of the work in itself by another entity would seem to me to partially abridge free will, in that a seemingly magical occurrence had taken place as a result of the working of an adept. This could be extended to any phenomenon which is other than normally acceptable. Could you speak on this paradox that is immediately the problem of anyone doing healing? Good question. I'll expand on that. But Ross says, we are humble messengers of the law of one. To us, there are no paradoxes. The workings which seem magical and therefore seem to infringe upon free will do not, in themselves, do so. For the distortions of perception are as many as the witnesses, and each witness sees what it desires to see. Okay, so Don's question is, wait a minute. For a bystander to witness what has happened, right? There seems to be an abridgment of free will. In the case that the healer is doing some work with the healed, and the witness is looking at this and saying, "Whoa, this is not what I expected," or whatever. It has this impression. Right, so that's Don's question. There's a paradox there, that there is free will in which I will look at something. It's almost like this is parallel, and you can see how this is not an infringement on free will. If you see a UFO, right, and you're not a believer, and you see it, is that infringing on free will? Probably not. I mean, you will fabricate whatever it is. People do this all the time. There's evidence of things, and they, especially scientists, when it comes to defying scientific establishment, you could see this. It sort of pains me, not so much. I think Neil deGrasse Tyson has his own reputation. So it doesn't pain me. But you can see in people like him that there's no longer a thirst for science, which is investigation, exploration of the unknown. It's a constant defense of the establishment. It's funny, eloquent people do this marvelously, and it's just fascinating to listen to them. But that's what they do. They see what they see, or they see what they want to see, not what they see. So this is what Ra is saying. No matter how incredible or miraculous something may be, right? What do they say? The distortions of perception are as many as the witnesses, and each witness sees what it desires to see. There are as many distortions there are witnesses. You will see what you want to see. And if anything, you may be inspired by the unknown and start your own journey. That is inspiration. That's not an infringement on free will. This correlates perfectly with my example of the UFOs that Ross says, when UFOs sightings are done by the Confederation, it produces an inspiration, or it's attempting, it's not even producing, it's attempting to produce a inspiration for the seeking of the unknown. Now, I think there is the funny distortion that normally happens. I mean, it's been happening for almost a century already with the UFO sighting, that people go into the unknown of what does it mean, the UFO, And I think we have created a mythology base. We have so many mythologies so far with this explosion of spirituality, UFOs, energy, and so on, quantum physics, and the whole nine. But the mythology on UFOs has been a plunge into finding, what the little green man is, and all the different spaceships that exist, and all of this. And of course, Orion is there to say, well, we'll keep distracting you. Nothing against ufologists, of course. Don was a ufologist. But I think we just take things out of context, and so far people even call this, I'm sure there are subcultures of this because I've heard them talking about, that there is a mothership that will come and save us, and we should be understanding way better, their language and their philosophies and their cultures and so on, because humanity is doomed. And oh my God, there's so much of this mythology. But that's how, the exploration into the unknown can take distortions. So it depends, as usual. Next part of this answer. Ross says, infringement upon free will occurs in this circumstance, the circumstance of healing and somebody witnessing, only if the entity doing the working ascribes the authorship of this event to itself or its own scales. Boo. Those who state that no working comes from it but only through it is not infringing upon free will. That bracket that you may see here is because the original text did not include not. That was corrected, as you will see in the next question. So keep that in mind. The Ra, I think they identified this in the next session as part of a pain flare. I'll talk about this, speaking of healing. Okay, so infringement, of course, happens if you say, oh, that was me. I did it. So go tell everyone, actually, I'm here, I'm the healer. Gabo, the healer. So, yeah, my own skills and so on. So that's just, that would be infringement, because manipulation comes here. Telling that which is not. In fact, should I say this? You see, we're stuck. We are stuck in this personality because we believe we are something. I know this is it's a little off track, off side on what we're talking about, but it's directly related to, what is the aggrandizing of the ego if not the belief on personality? Well, clearly, negative beings thrive on this. The vast majority of people are struggling with personality issues. Why? Because you're not the personality. I wish you could see this. Let me try to illustrate it. The negative being adores personality, right? Please pay attention to this. Focus your attention on this. Yes, there's a beauty in here. The negative beings, they adore personality. They bloat it. They increase it. They fashion it in so many ways, right? Whereas positive beings don't care about personality. But in our current world, we have been trained to believe in personality. Look at all the plethora of identities that are out there. Be proud of being Spanish, of being black, of being Asian, of being Russian, of being Venezuelan, I don't know. Be patriotic. Be proud of being a woman or a man, or a woman that feels like a man, or a man that feels like a woman, or a man that feels like a woman but actually likes men, and so on. I mean, I don't follow all of this, but there are so many labels out there. It just becomes nauseating to follow. And why would you? That's just adornishing the personality. And we wonder why the vast majority of people have personality disorders and are easily offended. I tell you what, negative people are not easily offended because they know, they believe in their personality so much that nobody can tarnish it, right? So that's what we have. You see, the issue is that we don't care about personality. We honestly don't care, but we have been brought up to believe that we should. That we should care about our personality. What you are matters. You see? Which is not the same as, hey, your life matters. All life is beautiful, including Earth. So we shouldn't even be told that. Should we be taught that? Not really. I think that's a natural thing. So anyhow, that is the admonition of, please, it's you, it's not me who's doing this, because then you would create some sort of personality. And by the gods, didn't we do that with Jesus and created a personality of let me not go into that. But yes, the last part, when they say those who state that no working comes from it but only through it is not infringing upon free will. So this is something that I actually had an issue trying to understand when I first read it back in whatever session it was, in the 50s maybe, session 50 something. Yeah, nothing comes from it but through it. That's a channel. See, you see a channel just like a wire, a cable. Things, information, electricity comes through it, but not from it. See, the cable is not producing electricity. Electricity is flowing through the cable. That's what we are. We are a conduit for energy. Now, what type of energy wants to come through? That's the spontaneous self. The unmanifested self, as I've talked about, is pushing that energy. And you can see how everything correlates perfectly here with unblocking of energy centers and the whole metaphysics of it. That it's just getting out of your own way. That personality that I've been talking about, just move it aside. It's not helpful. It's only getting in your own way. Now, the little notes that I will add here is that, remember, I am reading the raw contact, which is an edited version of the re-listened version, and does include all these mistakes, but corrected. You see, like, Ra actually said here, through it is infringing upon free will. And Don is going to correct this, so let's go to that so it makes more sense. Don catches the mistake. Very perceptive, Don. I have to just admire him. He says, you said that if the entity says that no working comes from it, but only through it, it is also infringing. Is that correct? Ra says, this is incorrect. We said that in that event, there is no infringement. Actually, Ra is wrong here. They didn't say that because we have the recording. You see, Ra, you're wrong. Right? I mean, they didn't say that. If you listen to the recording, they said, that they are infringing free will. So I have to make fun of Ra whenever I can, because they did. They're lying to us. See, that's the first lie. I catch the first lie of Ra. Well, they should have said, this is incorrect. We attempted to say that in that event there is no infringement, but they said that no, that's incorrect. We said that in the event, but they didn't. The whole raw material is a lie. Questions 7315 shows this. So to all the people that like debunking Ra, here it is. See, I'm even serving you. I don't think you're listening to this, but if you are, then you can use this. Oh, by By the gods, I would love to see that. Gabo says, by the gods. He believes in pantheism. All right, what I do believe is question 16. Don says, the one known as Jesus accumulated 12 disciples. What was his purpose in having these disciples with him? Ross says, what is the purpose of teach learning if there be no learned teachers? Those drawn to this entity were accepted by this entity without regard for any outcome. This entity accepted the honor duty placed upon it by its nature and its sense that to speak was its mission. I hear you. Speaking is my mission here. I love speaking. I love talking. I don't know how to stop. Why would I stop? You see, that's the energy that comes from it, and I don't claim anything from it. Actually, I'll probably butch it, but doesn't Lao Tzu in the Tao says that the Tao flows to the left and to the right, and when merits are accomplished, it lays no claims over it, meaning that it doesn't attribute any sort of authorship, just like Ross said here, to whatever it's happening. So yeah, you don't claim merit for being you. How much effort is it to be you? I mean, you can claim merit to be what you think you are, you see, because there is effort actually in creating a persona. There is effort in believing that you are something. This is why positive people or positive entities struggle with personalities. Isn't that obvious? Of course it is. See, we're looking at things wrong because first, we were indoctrinated into believing that we should create this personality, right? All right, we should cherish this personality because you are the son of whatever, and you should do this because your parents did that, and society expects this from you, but also school has demanded this of you, and blah blah blah. So you create this whole idea that, oh my god, I should be this thing. But inside, your inner child is like, I want to play, I want to do the things that I like. I like dancing, I like singing, I like building things, I like painting, I like telling people about my stories, and all these things are just there. And no, you have to go to do things that your personality, right? Unless you take the negative path and really embellish that personality, it's useless. It really is. It's not going to take you anywhere. It's only going to cause conflict because that's not you. Now, there is a reality to the personality. Rhymes. So the reality to the personality is that something is happening, but you cannot label it. If you label it, you did an effort. No effort. Wu Wei. Effortless action, right? Effortless action. That's what it means. No forcing, allowing. That's it's so not only simple but rewarding to be yourself. Of course, like I said, we have all this what we call blockages. Blockages are from the personality, believing that you must maintain that. And so when you maintain it, you block energy to the heart. What does the heart want to do? The heart wants to be itself. It doesn't have any restrictions. It has no limits, and that's why development of throat chakra is important because we do need some limits, which is not imposed by anybody, but by you. But how can you know your own limits if you don't express yourself? So all of this comes into an understanding when you truly stop forcing yourself to be something that you have been taught to be. Okay? So why did I say all of that? I'm not sure. But I hope that makes sense and it's helpful. Don's question was only about Jesus and his disciples. And I think Ra's answer here is pretty obvious. What is the purpose of teaching if nobody's going to learn, right? The dynamic was established, though. Let me see. Those drawn to this entity were accepted by this entity without regard for any outcome. Right, there we go. That's, what's the word? That's honest. That's honest wanting to learn. You have, listen to this part. Those drawn to Jesus were accepted by him without regard for any outcome. Listen, I'm going to tell you what I know, and I have no expectations. Whether this is actually Zen. You know, in Buddhism, we have all kinds of sects that you have to follow specific precepts, and you know what? These are rules that are placed there because they like to keep things neat. In Zen, they don't care. They don't have to follow anything. You just be here and do what you want, and if you want to talk, let's talk about it, and if not, then you're doing your thing, and that's fine. That's to me, that's why I'm so much more enticed by Zen than anything else in non-duality, or Buddhism. Actually, I shouldn't say that. In Buddhism, non-duality is just, it's an open world, open universe for anybody to interpret. It's a science. It's a law, just like the law of one. You know, nobody holds the law. Nobody actually created the law. The law is simply one. You cannot have separation without infinity. So infinity is just one. So that's the law. Everything is infinite. Everything is just one infinite being. You shouldn't even put a personality to it. It's just, if there is an infinity, then infinity is a being. Or in other words, infinity is. That's it. There is infinity. And you are that. You can't be something separate from infinity. Things are so simple, man, but we just like to complicate it. Mostly because we have a complex language that is very mechanical, analytical, and so on. So yes, that is true honesty. You learn whatever you want, but I'm here for just to be your friend, you know, and to whatever extent I can help you. This entity accepted the honor duty placed upon it by its nature and its sense that to speak was its mission. So Jesus realized that, of course, he had a powerful voice into which he could communicate his own beliefs. And so, you know, I can relate to that. I can relate to the passion that is to speak your piece, you know, to just say what you want. And you know, you're not, one thing, and I know it sounds kind of weird when I say it because I'm immortal, you know, I'm just a sinner and so on. But the truth is that there is an absolute truth, right? And so I say it all the time. The end of seeking is you realizing the absolute truth. Some people may hear this and say, he's claiming to have the absolute truth. I don't have it. I point at it. You know, I didn't fabricate it. It's been there the whole time, you know, and I just said it. It's infinity. And how is that the absolute truth? Well, because it is. And how do we access it? Inquire into your own nature. Who are you? You will end up there. So that's the absolute truth. Nobody can deny it. I mean, you can deny that you are. Let me not even go further. You cannot deny that you are. And if you are, then this is it. Infinity is. So you are infinity. You see, the whole confusion, of course, and I'll admit this, the whole confusion is that we have a very strong perception of separation. But the perception of separation is but the default mode in which we enjoy reality. So it's like we're struggling with the biggest gift of the universe, which is the possibility of see itself separate. Why do we struggle with that? It's the same issue with looking at polarities as if in conflict. They're not in conflict. See, yin yang, classic yin yang. They're not in conflict. You know, they're in harmony. They're dancing. People coupling or dancing, kind of word is that? People dancing or coupling. They're not in conflict, although you may see them as if they were sort of fighting, because there is a resistance to it, right? Sex has that resistance to it. There's a sort of painful pleasure relationship there. Dancing, same thing. There is a resistance in the way they hold each other and they move and they shovel, blah blah blah. But it's not conflict. It's a dance. It's a beauty. All right. You know what's beautiful? Question 17. Don says, in the exercise of the fire, then I assume that healer would be working with the same energy that we spoke of as entering through the crown chakra. Is this correct? By the way, we're done with Jesus. We're going to healing more specifically. Ross says, this is correct, with some additional notation necessary for your thought in continuing this line of study. When the magical personality has been seated in the green ray energy center for healing work, the energy then may be seen to be the crystalline center through which body energy is channeled. Thus, this particular form of healing uses both the energy of the adept and the energy of the upward spiraling light. So here's my big caveat. I am not a connoisseur of this metaphysics of healing energy flowing through the body and so on. People smarter than me have probably done this work. I'll do one note here is that the exploration of this may be interesting and fascinating, but for practical purposes, it just doesn't seem to pan out to me. I'll explain why. So we're just going to go into this question as, let's just see what Ross said here in terms of the structure of the energy flow and all of this stuff. By the way, I don't think I will finish this session today, so it'll be a 3-part session. So we'll get as far as we can. But let's start with the healing process, right? First of all, I don't know what the exercise of the fire is. I know they've talked about it in the past, but I haven't really been interested on it, so sorry. But Don's question is if the energy was entering through the crown chakra. Ra's not going to talk about much about the exercise of fire here, but they're going to talk about the flow of energy, right? And that's what they start saying. They say this is correct, that the energy enters through the crown chakra for what it's worth. Some additional notation, and they'll go on to say what the notation is. When the magical personality has been seated in the green ray energy center for healing work, that is, remember how we talked about in the last video, I think it was, that yes, it's definitely, when Don asked about the energy, right, that is channeled through the indigo ray, can go through heart, throat, or indigo for the specific work. Healing would be the heart, right? So Ra is confirming this again. When the magical personality has been seated in the green ray energy center, that is when you start the magic work. This is healing, for healing, magic used for healing. The energy then may be seen to be the crystalline center, right? The energy then may be seen to be the crystalline center through which body energy is channeled. Okay, so the body energy is going to be channeled through the green ray, right? Thus, this particular form of healing uses both the energy of the adept and the energy of the upward spiraling light. So this energy center through which body energy is channeled. So it has two. It has the upward spiraling light, which we know is the creator feeding this mind-body-spirit complex. And so it goes to the heart when there is no blockages, of course, in the lower energy centers, or minimal blockage, at least balance enough to divert or move push energy to the heart, then it is met by the adept's energy, right? That's what they're saying. It uses both the energy of the adept, which is the indigo ray form maker, and the upper spiral light. Boom. It meets there. The Kundalini sort of meets there. And that's healing. What else did they say? Ra says, as the green ray center becomes more brilliant, and we would note this brilliance does not imply overactivation, but rather crystallization, the energy of the green ray center of the body complex spirals twice. Firstly, clockwise, from the green ray energy center to the right shoulder, through the head, the right elbow, down through the solar plexus, and to the left hand. This sweeps all the body complex energy into a channel, which then rotates the great circle clockwise. Again, from right, we correct this instrument, from the left to the feet, to the right hand, to the crown, to the left hand, and so forth. I'll read that asterisk that I have there in a bit. First of all, I don't have the diagram for this, but you can sort of picture it. Apart from this, it's complicated because Ra offers a correction in the next session, and I'll read that now before I go into, right, because it's just a whole diagram that you have. If you're interested, this is where you can see that it's not of interest to me, because what can I do with this? Am I gonna visualize a diagram in my head and so on? Is that how it works? I don't know. I'm not clear. You know, people who want to practice this, they should get informed a lot more. But then again, the people that want to practice this may want to first unblock their energy centers. Unless they are already unblocked, then they probably don't need to learn this. You see the paradox that is created here? Not a paradox, but the I don't know what to call it. Maybe I shouldn't call it anything. Yeah, it's just whoever needs to learn this, seems to me that, you know, they already have gone through this process, so they're already doing it, so I don't need to learn it. I don't know. But in any case, just to go through the structure in the diagram, Ra says that when the green ray energy center becomes more brilliant, which doesn't mean overactivation. We've talked about overactivation already, which is just let me be super loving to everybody, because love is what's going to make me ascend into fourth density. Some people force themselves to do that, or some people just have an overactivated heart, right? So it doesn't mean that. It means to me, crystallization is it's a function of balancing of the lower energy centers, right? So for you to crystallize your heart, you need to have a crystallized lower energy centers, right? That makes sense. You have to start from the bottom. So in any case, more brilliant in that way, it now starts the whole diagram. First, clockwise, and I would think clockwise would be this way if I'm looking at myself from the front, and then it goes from the green ray right here in the center to the right shoulder, right? That's the first part of the spiral. Then it goes through the head and goes up here, then through the right elbow. I'm not sure why the right elbow, if I'm going, oh yes, because I guess it spirals down, and if you're placing, maybe going this way, I don't know, from the head it goes to the right elbow, right? And then from the right elbow through the solar plexus, because it comes down here, then you, right? And then to the left hand, because it opens up a lot more to the left hand. I think I'm doing this right. This sweeps all the body complex energy into a channel, which then rotates the great circle clockwise. I don't know how this is done. Clockwise again from right, and they correct themselves from left. From left to the feet, right? From left, I guess, to the feet. It goes down to the feet, and then it circles back again to the right hand, then to the crown. Yeah, I don't know. They make a correction here. This is the asterisk. They say, this is in the next session 74, question 19. They say, in the exercise of the fire, let me have you read it too. In the exercise of the fire, you may see the initial spiral clockwise from the green ray energy center, through the shoulders and head, then through the elbows, then to the left hand. The channel had been corrected before the remainder of this answer was completed. So they added that to this, I guess. So again, green ray energy center through the shoulders. It goes through both shoulders, as it seems. Maybe, right? Then the head, then through the elbows, as we have them like this, then left hand. I didn't bother with making a diagram of this, so again, doesn't seem interesting to me. I know some people might find it interesting, and they'll do the mathematical drawing, the whole thing. But how is that practical? How do you apply that? I'm always interested with that. I'm sorry, I cannot be interested with something that is not practical. Why would I care about protons and electrons when they're not practical to me? How do I use them? Has anybody ever used an electron in their lives? I'm not talking about, obviously, science endeavors, which is this. This can become a science in which there is no practical purpose. Maybe to understand, but the practical means, and we're talking about here, understanding the self, at least from my point of view. So let's finish what Ra says here. They say, thus in the incoming body energy, crystallized, regularized, and channeled by the adept's personality, reaching to the green ray energy center, may then pour out the combined energies of the adept, which is incarnate, thus offering the service of healing to an entity requesting that service. This basic situation is accomplished as well when there is an entity which is working through a channel to heal. So that's how it's performed. The incoming body energy, crystallized, regularized, right? All this energy has been channeled, crystallized, regularized by the adept's personality, which is, I suppose, just the empty channel of the willingness to heal, reaching to the green ray energy center, can be poured out to the combined energies of the adept, which is incarnate, thus offering the service of healing to an entity requesting that service. So all of that is to give that energy. This basic situation is accomplished as well when there is an entity which is working through a channel to heal. I'm not sure what that means. This basic situation is accomplished as well when there is an entity which is working through a channel to heal. Yeah, I don't get that last part. Honestly, like I said, this seems to explain how people who naturally do this, let's take Pachita, the classic Pachita as an example. I don't think she knew anything about this. I don't think she needed to learn anything of this to be the healer that she was. Again, for one reason or another, I'm only interested in those things that are practical to me. Okay, I'm a selfish man, so I think about myself only. No, I'm only interested in those things that are practical, for us, for the people who want to get the information and say, I can apply this to my day-to-day life. And maybe, let me be completely open and honest with you. Maybe it's because in the past, and this is just my experience, of course, that's just me. In the past, I was bombarded with all this information, right? When my seeking was sort of random. I had no idea what I was seeking. I had no idea what I wanted. And I heard healing, and I said, oh, healing is the answer. Then I heard Qigong. Oh, Qigong is the answer. Then I heard about, energy centers, chakras, that's the thing. And I kept reading and finding and looking and, plant medicine, that's the answer. And so on. It becomes tedious at some point to continue the confusing path of the seeker who has no idea what is seeking, you know? So that's the neurosis of, or was my neurosis back then. And all of this just seems to, yes, I indulge in all this information to what? You know, I to learn how things work. I found in my path a lot of people who can explain to me brilliantly all of this. Oh, it works this way because there is an energy field that goes through you and this and that and the other. I said, all right, how do I use it? I don't know. So I'm like, okay, I'm back in square one. I don't know. I just it was never practical. So all this information was not practical. It was just a sort of nerdy information that people love to consume, and I guess that's fine, you know. But I was interested mostly. See, all my seeking was peace. I want to be at peace and harmony and be able to radiate that to others, be able to give it to people, because in fact that's not true. I'm lying. I wanted it for myself. It all starts with that selfish motive, right? It's not selfish, it's just you. I remember a shaman telling me one day about intentions and so on. Shaman said, whatever you want to do with others, because that was my intention, I wanted to help others. This is prior to the Law of One. This was me as a nutritionist. I wanted to help people become healthier and so on. The shaman told me, first, you know, whatever you want to do to others, do it to yourself. And I said, like, never thought about it. So that's, you know, the inward path. You first have to know what you want for yourself. Then that just simply radiates. So yeah, that's my whole take on this. There is more to talk about healing, so let's get into it and see what else we can pick apart. Question 18. Don says, could you tell me how this transfer of light, I believe it would affect the patient to be healed? That's the question. Could you tell me how this transfer of light, I believe it would affect the patient to be healed? Sounds weird. Ron says, the effect is that of polarization. The entity may or may not accept any percentage of this polarized life energy which is being offered. In the occasion of the laying on of hands, this energy is more specifically channeled, and the opportunity for acceptance of this energy similarly more specific. It may be seen that the King's Chamber effect is not attempted in this form of working, but rather the addition to one whose energies are low, the opportunity of the building up of those energies. Many of your distortions, called illnesses, may be aided by such means. Okay, so how does it work? How does this work? The transfer. So Don is asking, can you tell me how this transfer of light would affect the patient to be healed? That's what he was asking. How does this transfer of light, right? First is polarization. I am unsure if this is a thing for negative polarized people, so I can't talk about that, but I do have an insight on this in terms of how it affects positively polarized people. The first thing is that the entity may or may not accept any percentage of this polarized life energy which is being offered. Let me go back to the very crude example of you advising your friend. Well, you tell your friend, dude, you know, this is what's happening, or, you know, this is what I see. And your friend may reject entirely what you're saying, right? They may say, you're not my friend, you're not agreeing with what I say, you know, so I'm done talking to you, and leave. The seed, however, is always there. But let's just take that as the extreme rejection, right? May or may not accept any percentage of this polarized life energy, which is being offered. In the other hand, there's complete enlightenment at that moment, and your friend says, wow, you're a good friend. The only thing you did was, speak true. That's it. So you can't even attribute yourself, unless, you take it as, of course, I can see the truth. Now you saw it there, and that's fine. But yes, that's why there is a percentage. I love how Ra explains it. The entity may or may not accept any percentage of it. So in these two extremes, sometimes there is, like I said, the seed is always there. How much a person may be upset and say, it sucks that you cannot agree with me, but I can see your point. I see your point. I just can't accept it. That's accepting some of the truth. Now, make it all abstract and metaphysical, and you'll get the same thing. The healer is providing the same view, possibly metaphysically, in time-space, through mind, thoughts, whatever. But the person to be healed needs to accept this view, whether it be through words, through touching, through telepathy, whatever. It's the same dynamic. The other person needs to accept that which hasn't accepted yet, right? That's what healing is accepting that which you haven't accepted. In the occasion of the laying on hands, this is another type of healing. This energy is more specifically channeled, and the opportunity for acceptance of this energy similarly more specific. I'm not familiar with the laying of hands. I do know that there is a but I don't think this is it. This is hard healing. This is green ray, so I won't even talk about that. There is a healing that is, and Ra talked about this previously, the yellow ray healing. But no, this is green ray. And the same opportunity of acceptance is in effect. But it's more specific, because I guess the laying on hands is not something that is general, but just in the place. So you need to maybe accept the energy there. I don't know. Ra has more to say, right? Oh, I read this already. This is that it may be seen that the King's Chamber effect is not attempted in this form of working. Well, the King's Chamber, to me, you see, the Queen's Chamber is the initiation, right? And then the King's Chamber is the healing. So in the healing, there is the projection, this is how I see it at least, is the projection of the self as it is, and then the acceptance of that self by the witnessing consciousness, the conscious attention of the entity to see it. So this effect is not attempted in this form of working. See, there is a deconstruction of the self as it believes to be, and there is the viewing of the total self. That's how I see it, though. So here, it's not that is happening, but it's the addition to those energies of the low opportunity. So this is, it kind of makes sense in the way I see it. The addition to one whose energies are low, right? It's the offering, right? What it's being done is the addition of those energies that are low for the building up of them. Can I go back to the same example? I think it's just very practical and it illustrates exactly what I mean. When your friend comes to you, how are his energies? They're very low, it says, I cannot accept this, and whether they go home with the same lack of acceptance and upset with you to a certain degree, or if they go uplifted by your information, the same thing happened. Their energies, those energies that had been available there for him, they weren't accepted. And so by you throwing in a little bit of a seed, maybe over time your friend will accept it and say, you know what, you were right. I just had to accept things as they were, or whatever be the case. So that's what it is. It's building up of those energies, which is acceptance. What is opening the heart? It's acceptance. What is acceptance? Well, everything that's happening. You cannot reject things. So if you accept your life as it is, you are living with an open heart. Period. Does that mean that lower energy centers need to be clear? Of course. Because the opposite is that your self is concentrated there. Your sense of self is your ego is there, and it's not accepting things, or it's trying to see things as it sees it fit. So, not surprising, Ra says many of your distortions called illness may be aided by such means. If I can summarize this whole healing process, is that if you want to heal yourself, pay attention to your personality. Where are you being blocked? This is what we can navigate together as shadow work. Those things that I don't accept of myself, that I see as, that's I can't be like that because my parents told me this, and my teacher, and my uncles, and whatever. My society, my group of people, my friends, they all tell me this, so I need to remain. Well, that's distortions towards illness if you're blocking yourself there. So, there's no surprise. All right, question 19 is a long one, so I'll leave these for the next video. As you can see, I won't be able to cover this entirely. So, that's all I got today. Conclusions. Let me reinforce what I've been talking about with healing. And because when we hear healing, there are two things. There's actually something that is going to be said in question 19, and I'll mention it here because we've talked about this already. There are certain conditions which cannot be healed, and these limitations, these distortions, whatever you want to call it, they should never be seen as something, and I think that's the first mistake, to see it as, I'm limited, I am incapable, I have disability, right? I talked about in a podcast how we have created, especially in our Western world, the language of limitation. Well, this person is limited. This person is incapable, or whatever. Disabled. Oh my God, that's such a load in your mind. As soon as you have a disability, everybody's going to tell you, well, you're disabled. Disabled for what? For being a cog in the system? Yes, that's what it means. So if you do feel, of course, like I have to be a part of this system, then yeah, you are disabled. Because the system itself created you as a disabled person. Mentally, I talked about this, how there are so many psychological labels, ADHD and all its variants, and schizophrenic, and whatever. I mean, I get people talk about this, and it's just like, whatever, it's just like, that's a label. You want to believe that? That's great, but that's not you. In any case, all of this, first, we need to acknowledge that illness is not that. And there is the possibility that you have certain distortions, preferences by your mind-body-spirit complex to be one way. That's okay. Why? My argument is to you is, why do you think that's a problem? Because what you believe that to be a problem is the problem. It's not the problem itself. In other words, the conditions is not the problem. It's what you believe the condition to be that is the problem. So change that and everything changes. It's that simple. But we're stubborn and we say, no, 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 no. I have been conditioned to believe this way, and so I need to be healed from this. Okay, I need to go around that. But that's the point, you see. Now, once you accept that you have a condition, then that condition, like Ross says in question 19, which I'll cover next time, you need to meditate on that, in that there is a positive, affirmative use of this apparent limitation for your own good. Remember, be super selfish. I've been joking with the word selfish here, so I hope you understand. No, be focused on yourself. You see, the positive polarity is doubly strong, or twice as strong as the negative polarity, because it focuses on you and the other. You see, it's taking everything as a collective. Being selfless doesn't mean that you don't exist. You're unacknowledging God. You are the source of God, and everything else is a projection of yourself, because you are God. You see? So it's not about being selfish. A lot of people have that mistake still somehow in their psyche, saying, oh, it's just that I do this, but I know I'm being selfish. No, you're not. You're taking care of yourself. You're loving yourself. It's not too bad. It isn't. So that's it. Those are my 2 cents there. I have nothing else to say. I hope this made sense to you, and we'll continue talking about healing in the next video, part 3 of session 73. This is where I say thank you, I appreciate you, and I'll see you in part 3 of session 73.